My husband, Jason Steele, had a childhood friend named Candy Brooks. She was sweet, or so everyone thought. One day, she fell down the stairs and got a concussion. Without any hesitation, she claimed I had pushed her. Jason, without listening to my frantic pleas or struggles, ordered the guards to drag me away. I was pregnant. He had me thrown into solitary confinement. When they finally let me out, I was covered in blood. I had lost the baby. For a moment, Jason seemed sorry. He held my hand and whispered that we were still young, that we could have another baby someday. I just laughed coldly. There wouldn't be any more children. I had deliberately hurt myself, beaten my stomach, because I knew both Jason and that unborn child would ultimately turn against me, just like Candy. They would corner me, take away any choice, any dignity. I had already lived a lifetime as prey, always trampled. This time I decided I would take control before fate could destroy me again. Years later, I became one of the richest and most powerful financial tycoons in the region. Jason Steele, the man who had everything handed to him in my past life, ended up broken and pitiful, with nothing. "Comrade, your baby suffered a strong impact and is showing signs of a threatened miscarriage. You must stay in bed these next few days, otherwise we might not be able to save the child." A voice slowly pulled me back from the darkness. A throbbing pain spread through my abdomen and body. The red slogans on the green walls, the peeling door. It looked like something from 40 years ago. But hadn't I already died? Jason had thrown me in prison. 5 years later, I was diagnosed with terminal cancer and died in agony. So why was I seeing this scene now? The door to the hospital room burst open. A young man in a military uniform stormed in. His anger palpable. It was Jason, but decades younger, looking sharp and handsome, even furious. He charged to my bedside. "Lena Carter, how could you be so cruel and push Candy? Do you have any idea she almost..." The words "I didn't do it" rose in my throat, but I swallowed them. What was the point of denying it? What good would explaining do? Last time I denied it, I explained it wasn't my fault, but Jason believed only Candy. He shouted, his face twisted with rage. I looked at him, this younger version of the man I'd loved to death in my past life. I had devoted everything to him, humbled myself, and died a wretched death. I had been so naive. Even after being framed by Candy, thrown into prison by Jason, diagnosed with terminal cancer and given days to live, I still thought about him. I still longed for him. I used to believe it was all Candy's fault, that Jason was just deceived, that he was innocent. That belief lasted until the very end. When I knew I was dying, I begged the doctor to let me see Jason and our son one last time. They refused me coldly. The doctor told me Jason was taking Candy overseas for her birthday, that he didn't have time for me. My own son sent a message. "If you're going to die, then just die already. Stop embarrassing me. Don't make things harder for my dad." On the brink of death, I spat up blood and collapsed. I never expected to live again. But here I was, seeing Jason's young face once more. The man I had loved for decades, the man who betrayed me for just as long. That love was gone. Completely vanished. In my past life, if Jason had just told me honestly that he loved Candy, no matter how much I loved him, I would have stepped aside. But he never did. He always insisted he just wanted to repay her kindness, that he saw her as a sister. Yet, under that noble excuse, he and Candy did everything behind my back, shameless and indecent. My life had been one long tragedy, devoted to someone else's fairy tale. The pain and despair I felt before dying left behind a hatred I couldn't suppress. I stared at Jason, locking eyes with him. If I could, I wanted to bite him, rip into him, just to release even a fraction of the rage buried inside me for the innocent, pitiful woman I used to be. Jason didn't notice the change in my expression. He kept shouting, calling me vile and shameless, saying being pregnant wouldn't save me, that he wouldn't let me off the hook this time. I gave a mocking laugh. "And how exactly are you planning to do that? I want you to apologize to Candy, and I want you in solitary confinement to reflect seriously on your mistakes. The same old routine. Exactly how he handled it in my previous life. 2 conditions, leaving me no room to resist. Apologize to Candy Brooks and admit I was wrong. Accept punishment in solitary confinement. Reflect on my behavior. Both mandatory. No one believed my explanations. In the end, I had no choice but to apologize to Candy, to admit to something I didn't do. I thought maybe, just maybe, he would let me go for the sake of our 5 years of marriage or because I was pregnant. I was far too naive. The day I was discharged from the hospital, Jason heartlessly had the guards send me straight to the isolation chamber. I begged him, tears streaming down my face. I told him I was pregnant, asked him to consider the child, to punish me later instead. Jason showed no mercy. He said I was vicious and unrepentant, that I had to pay the price for my actions to learn a lesson. 7 days in pitch-black solitary confinement. All I could do was count numbers, waiting to be released. Jason didn't visit once. The guards even seemed to forget I was in there. A pregnant woman, locked away like a criminal. It wasn't until Jason returned from accompanying Candy to the capital for her medical treatment that he realized I was still locked up. A normal person wouldn't survive 7 days without food or water. When they finally pulled me out, I was in a deep coma. It was a miracle I hadn't died. Dr. Song worked tirelessly for days to save me, but 7 days without a single drop of water or grain of food had severely damaged my organs. I developed a chronic stomach condition, probably one of the reasons I eventually got terminal cancer. When I was finally released, Jason was briefly overwhelmed with guilt. He treated me unusually well and I thought maybe he truly loved me. 'Cause I loved him, I forgave him. But later, Candy told me that Jason only treated me nicely because he was afraid I'd report him to his superiors. If I had died in solitary confinement, especially while pregnant, it would have been a political disaster for him. I didn't believe her back then. I kept deluding myself, falling into one toxic cycle after another. Pathetic me, right up until the end of my last life, clung to the illusion that Jason loved me, that he'd only been deceived by Candy Brooks. But in this life I know better. I remember everything. I will never again be blinded by Jason Steele's facade. Because no form of love should ever come wrapped in endless pain. I stared at Jason and said firmly, word for word, I did nothing wrong. I won't apologize, and you have no right to put me in solitary. Jason's face darkened with fury. Are you sure about that? I'm sure. You're so stubborn and ignorant. Then don't blame me for what happens next. The veins on Jason's forehead bulged as he turned and barked toward the door. Take Lena Carter to solitary. Let her reflect. The guards came in and dragged me away. In my past life I cared about appearances. I kept quiet, let them take me, just to save face for Jason and myself. But not this time. As soon as the guards laid hands on me, I screamed at the top of my lungs. Murder! Jason Steele is trying to kill me and my unborn child for that mistress, Candy Brooks. Help! I'm innocent. Jason never expected me to throw away my dignity and scream like that. Everyone around turned to look. People started whispering. His reputation was in shambles. He had no choice. In a panic, he lunged forward to cover my mouth with his hand. But I was burning with hatred. I bit down on his hand hard. Blood filled my mouth, thick and metallic. I saw his face contort in pain. Did it hurt? Of course it did. He was bleeding. But that pain was nothing compared to what I'd endured in my last life. I was dragged to solitary under the gaze of a stunned crowd. People pointed and whispered as I passed by. What did Lena Carter do to deserve solitary? I heard she pushed Candy Brooks down the stairs. Candy got seriously hurt. That's why Commander Steele had no choice but to punish her, even though she's his wife. So that's it. Well, I guess she brought it on herself. I don't know. Lena's always been gentle and soft-spoken. Doesn't seem like the kind of person who'd do something so cruel. Isn't she pregnant? Look, her forehead is still bleeding. Commander Steele going this far for an outsider against his own wife. It's just too heartless. Yeah. Commander Steele really is way too protective of that Candy Brooks. He's a man of strong feelings, very clear about gratitude and grudges. I heard he's just repaying a debt to Candy. Even if that's true, it still feels like too much. Lena Carter is pregnant after all. Even the law doesn't immediately sentence a pregnant woman to death for murder, let alone in a simple dispute like this. Commander Steele's favoritism toward Candy Brooks is just too obvious. All the murmuring around him made Jason Steele's face go ashen. In his wildest dreams, he never thought someone like me, always gentle and composed, would embarrass him like this in public. After I was thrown into solitary, he ordered the guards to lock the door behind me. "Lena Carter, I never imagined you'd be such a disgraceful woman," he spat. "Originally, I planned to keep you in here for 7 days, but clearly that's not enough. Make it 2 weeks." With that, Jason stormed off in a rage. The door slammed shut. Darkness swallowed the room. In my previous life, I had endured 7 horrifying days in this very cell. I lost consciousness, nearly froze to death. And just when I had finally recovered, Candy Brooks framed me again, leading to a premature birth. I suffered terribly to deliver that cursed child, bleeding so much I had to have my uterus removed. I poured all the love I had left into that child, my only one. But that little monster turned out to be just like his father, cruel and shameless. He actually liked Candy, hated me, his own mother. Remembering all the suffering I endured in my past life, a cold smile crept across my lips. That vile little thing, I wouldn't give him the chance to survive this time. I clenched my fists. Then, one punch at a time, I started striking my belly. Half an hour later, my scream shook the walls. People came running and unlocked the door. They found me lying in a pool of blood on the floor. I had miscarried. Covered in blood, I was rushed to the hospital. Jason had been sitting at Candy's bedside when he heard the guard report that I had lost the baby. He leapt up without hesitation and rushed out of the room, completely missing the satisfied smirk on Candy's face as she watched him go. After the surgery, I was wheeled out of the operating room and immediately spotted Jason waiting with a grim expression on his face. He stepped forward, trying to take my hand. "Get out," I said, cold and clear. Jason froze and stepped back, stunned, watching the nurse push me past him. After the 4-drip was in place, Jason actually followed me into the room again. This time, with a rare expression of sorrow on his face. Was he grieving the loss of the baby? Yeah, right. In my past life, that bastard son of his constantly said that if it weren't for his existence, Jason would have already divorced me to be with Candy. He believed. Jason, it seemed, stayed in this cold, broken marriage largely out of guilt. So now that the baby was gone, he should have been happy, relieved. I watched as he slowly approached my hospital bed. I looked at him, my expression devoid of joy or sadness, completely numb. He reached out, perhaps to touch me, but the coldness in my eyes must have been too much. He hesitated, then pulled his hand back. In a stiff voice he said, "Lena, I didn't expect this to happen. Just rest and recover. For now, we're still young, we'll have another baby." Another baby. I almost laughed out loud. Was that meant to comfort me? After all, word of my miscarriage in solitary must have already spread throughout the entire base. Commander Steele, so revered for his discipline and integrity, had shown zero mercy to his own pregnant wife. I could only imagine what kind of gossip was flying around now, especially with another woman involved. Jason's open favoritism toward Candy was no secret. I figured rumors had already started, and I would gladly pour more fuel on that fire. As I was thinking this, a nurse rushed in and called out to Jason, flustered. "Commander Steele, Comrade Brooks fainted." Apparently, Candy had found out I miscarried and tried to come visit me, but her body was so weak she only made it a few steps before collapsing in the hallway. This was her favorite trick. In my last life, it worked like a charm every single time. But this time things might not go her way. Jason immediately ran off in a panic, leaving me lying in bed, sobbing and screaming. My cries were so loud that nurses, doctors, and even patients from the next room came to see what was happening. When they realized I had lost my baby, they all tried to comfort me with kind words. While crying and wiping my tears, I began telling the nurses, doctors, and curious patients everything that Candy Brooks and Jason Steele had done behind my back ever since Candy showed up. The man listed on my marriage certificate, Jason, had completely drifted away from me. Jason arranged a job for her, gave her more than half his salary to spend however she pleased. Candy clung to him constantly, deliberately provoking me, trying to stir up conflict between us. She always found excuses to pull him away, even in the middle of the night, saying she was afraid of thunder or rain and had him stay with her all night long. And then she even had the nerve to say she was going to get rid of the baby in my belly, to force me and Jason into a divorce. Everything I said was true. People in the base had seen it with their own eyes. They just hadn't known that the two of them were also spending time alone at night, a man and a woman behind closed doors. As I spoke, I saw the looks in everyone's eyes begin to change. Add to that the fact that I had just lost my baby while Jason ignored me completely and rushed to Candy's side without hesitation. People couldn't help but notice. The nurses, doctors, and patients all heard every word I said. From the looks on their faces, I knew it wouldn't be long before news of Jason's affair with Candy spread like wildfire through the entire military base. Jason was summoned by his superior. He told them he and Candy were clean, that he was only helping her out of gratitude. His superior believed him, but the gossip outside was getting out of hand. That leader had been Jason's longtime mentor and liked him a lot. Still, he warned Jason to watch his reputation and keep his distance from Candy. When Jason returned to the hospital, his face was like thunder. As soon as he closed the door, he glared at me. "Lena Carter, you almost ruined me because of your impulsiveness." My superiors talked to me. "Do you realize what kind of damage that could do to my career?" I curled my lips slightly. "Good, I hope it does affect you. In my last life, I endured everything in silence, humiliation, pain, betrayal, while Jason and Candy lived carefree and unbothered. After going through such a hellish life, how could I let him sail smoothly to success in this one? I was reborn, and I intended to make life a little more uncomfortable for my enemies. Jason didn't know what I was thinking. He thought I still loved him deeply, still cared about his future more than my own. He assumed I'd follow his every instruction without complaint. He warned me, "From now on, you need to clarify those rumors one by one. Let everyone know that there's nothing between me and Candy, that our relationship is purely like brother and sister." I tilted my head and looked at him. "Really, brother and sister? That's strange because as far as I know, you two don't share a single drop of blood." Jason's expression shifted at my mocking smile. "If I had any feelings for Candy, do you think I would have married you?" He snapped. That was exactly how he brainwashed me in my last life, and like a fool, I had believed him. Now, hearing that same tired excuse again, I couldn't help but laugh, cold, sarcastic laughter. Jason's face darkened. "Lena, this isn't the time to be petty or jealous. I'm in this mess because you wouldn't listen. I'm warning you, cut it out. If you keep this up, I'll divorce you." "Divorce? That's exactly what I wanted." "Great," I said without missing a beat. "Let's do it. Let's get divorced right now." Jason wasn't expecting that. His expression froze. "What nonsense are you talking about?" "I'm not talking nonsense," I replied calmly. "Why should I share my husband with another woman? Let's just end it cleanly. You go your way, I'll go mine. We each find our own future." His face turned red with anger. "What are you saying, Lena? We're in a military marriage. You think divorce is that simple? So what? You plan to keep sacrificing yourself for a lifetime? Or maybe you want your precious Candy to stay the third party forever?" The term third party didn't even exist in that era. Jason blinked, confused. "Third party? What does that mean?" I didn't bother explaining. Instead, I looked him in the eye. "If you want me to believe you, then from now on, you are not allowed to have any contact with Candy. Can you do that?" To my surprise, Jason agreed. From now on, you handle everything related to Candy, he said. I promise I won't see her in private again. This change was something that never happened in my previous life. Jason Steele, for the sake of his promotion, had weighed the pros and cons and chose to back down. It was exactly what I expected of him. But Candy Brooks didn't have that kind of awareness. I was sure she wouldn't sit still for long. If Jason stopped seeing her, she'd definitely try to stir things up soon, and I was looking forward to it. After all, since I had been given a second chance at life, I intended to reclaim at least part of the pain and humiliation I suffered before. Candy didn't know that Jason had decided to keep his distance from her to protect his career, so she went on playing the same old tricks, pretending to be sick and pitiful, lying in a hospital bed and waiting for Jason to come see her, just like she did in the past. But days passed, and Jason never came. Unable to bear it any longer, Candy started having others pass on messages, exaggerating her condition and trying to guilt Jason into visiting. When Jason heard that Candy had supposedly coughed up blood, he was in a panic. But his superior had given him a strict order he didn't dare defy. So, in the end, he came to find me instead. Candy, convinced Jason was finally going to show up, was full of anticipation. But when I walked in instead of the man she longed for, her face twisted in fury. "What are you doing here?" she spat. "I came to see you," I said lightly. "Wanted to see what kind of tricks you're up to now." I strolled casually around the room. "Didn't they say you were dying? Funny, you look perfectly fine to me. Lips red, teeth white, not a single sign of weakness. Candy, don't you think this whole fake sick act is getting a little outdated?" Exposed, Candy dropped the act. "Lena Carter, losing your baby must have felt awful, huh?" Her smile turned cruel. "I was the one who caused it, but Jason doesn't care about you at all. He only trusts me. For me, he's willing to wrong his own wife. You must feel terrible about that." "You're overthinking it," I said with a calm smile. "If losing a child means Jason will stay away from a disgusting woman like you, then it was worth it, Candy. You probably don't know yet. Jason's not going to see you again." She froze. "What do you mean?" "I mean exactly what I said. Words are already out. Everyone's saying you and Jason have an inappropriate relationship. He's trying to protect his reputation now, which means keeping his distance from you." Candy looked stunned. "What did you do, Lena?" "Don't worry," I said, smiling as I walked over to her bed, standing above her. "I'll explain it all, Candy. I know exactly what kind of filthy schemes are in that mind of yours. You wanted to kill the child in my womb. You wanted to break me and Jason apart so you could take my place. So I helped you. I gave you exactly what you wanted." I leaned in, eyes cold. "Here's the truth. I was the one who ended my pregnancy. I was also the one who spread the rumors about you and Jason." "No, that's impossible," Candy's voice trembled. "You're insane. You love that baby. You love Jason. You were obsessed with his reputation." The disbelief in her eyes turned to sheer rage. He believed that his existence was the only thing keeping Jason tethered to our loveless marriage. That little monster actually celebrated when I miscarried the second time, saying it was God's way of correcting things. He even had the audacity to suggest I should be grateful. That now Jason would finally be free to be with Candy, and I wouldn't have to suffer anymore. The irony was suffocating. That night, as I lay in that hospital bed recovering from yet another forced abortion, I made a promise to myself. I wouldn't let history repeat itself. This time, I wouldn't give either of them the satisfaction of breaking me. The next morning, I requested a transfer. Not just any transfer. I asked to be reassigned to the front lines, to the most dangerous posting available. Jason was furious. He came to my room, his face twisted in disbelief. "Lena, you're out of your mind. You can't just throw your life away like this." I looked at him, really looked at him for the first time in years. "Isn't that what you've been doing to me for the past decade? Throwing my life away for your precious Candy?" He opened his mouth to argue, but I cut him off. "I'm not asking for your permission, Jason. I'm telling you, I'm leaving. And if you try to stop me, I'll make sure everyone knows exactly what went on between you and Candy while I was rotting in solitary. His face went pale. He knew I wasn't bluffing. The rumors had already started spreading, thanks to my little performance in the isolation chamber. One word from me, and his career would be over before it even began. You wouldn't, he whispered. I smiled, and for the first time in my life it wasn't a mask. It was genuine. Try me. Jason Steele learned something important that day. He learned that the woman he'd spent years trying to break was no longer the same person. I had been reborn with a purpose, and that purpose wasn't to suffer silently for his happiness. 6 months later, I was stationed at the border, leading a reconnaissance unit. The work was dangerous, but it was also fulfilling. For the first time in my life, I felt like I was in control of my own destiny. Jason wrote to me once, begging me to come back. He said Candy had married someone else, that he'd finally realized what he'd lost. I read his letter, felt nothing, and burned it without responding. Some fairy tales are meant to stay broken. As for me, I found something far more valuable than love. Found myself. And in the end, that was enough.